welcome once again to Sid Caudle.
Mm.
And Sid, obviously, we've got to talk about Ashton in Makerfield. Well, it's called Makerfield now. Everything seems to be sexed up these days, don't they? It's Team England and whatever, Police England, or, well, it's all froth, isn't it? Which sums up where we are quite a lot of the time. But it certainly sums up what's happened with the bombshell news that if we had an election today between Starmer and Andy Burnham, Starmer would be slaughtered. Well, that's not a bombshell. Everybody knows that, don't they?
Yes, but it's quite interesting what's happened. Um, I think there's no doubt in my mind that if Andy Burnham had stood in the Gorton and Denton by-election, he would have won because Labour in that by-election, got a very good vote, even though they came third. I mean, the Greens won it with about 13,000, the Reform got just over 10, and Labour got just over 9. So, but that was with a completely unknown candidate. Had Andy Burnham been standing in that seat, the indications are that he would definitely have won and would have been in Parliament now and would have been a threat to Starmer. But what's happened is that Josh Simmons has stood down in Makerfield. He was a friend of Starmer and appears to be very much on board with Starmer. So he stood down in a seat where Reform got 35% of the vote in the general election. I mean, they got a negligible vote in Gorton and Denton, but still managed to come second. In Makerfield, they were second with a very substantial vote. It's a constituency which voted 66% for leave in the 2016 referendum. And suddenly, Keir Starmer has made an announcement about how we've got to get closer to the European Union. I mean, that was in the King's speech. Wes Streeting has suddenly made an announcement that he wants us to rejoin the EU. And they seem to be deliberately trying to make the EU a major issue in the by-election, which obviously goes against Andy Burnham's interest, because the more you make the EU an issue, the more likely it is that Reform are going to win the seat. And Andy Burnham has been forced to come out and say, oh, no, I don't think the EU is an issue in this by-election. We've got to fight this by-election on local issues, not on the EU. So he's trying to say, oh, no, 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 we don't want to talk about the EU. But the leadership of the party apparently deliberately made EU a major issue. I think Andy Burnham is being stitched up. I think he's being stitched up by being forced to stand in this seat in the first place, which is majorly Reform, and he's being stitched up by making EU the major issue. And I think because of this, it's highly unlikely that he's going to win the seat.
Fascinating politics, isn't it? And if you look at the time Lord Mandelson has spent with certain of these people, the dark arts could come in very useful here, couldn't they?
Well, that appears to me to be what's being employed. Exactly what you're saying, the dark arts. And frankly, I think it reflects very badly on Keir Starmer, the fact that he is using the dark arts. It actually reflected badly on him, the fact that he stopped Andy Burnham standing in Gorton and Denton when he knew it was likely he was going to win. And now he's effectively putting him up in a seat which he knows it's highly unlikely he's going to win. And this is the way he's trying to stay in power. And frankly, I think it stinks, absolutely stinks.
Yeah. There are a few times when I get really mad, Sid, because you get used to accepting it's politics, it's the way things work, it's probably the best of a bad system. But when you come across what Starmer said the day before the United Kingdom march, and he basically castigated families, and especially Christian families. That was awful, Sid.
Well, the whole approach to the United Kingdom march is disgusting. Now, I mean, I've got reservations about, what Tommy Robinson stands for historically. I mean, I totally understand that people are saying he's become a Christian and he's now a different man from what he was. But the reality is that he stood for a very violent reaction to Islam. And it's even yesterday, somebody was showing me a film which portrayed crusaders with the crosses and the crusader armor, and these are the heroes that were fighting the Muslims, many hundreds of years ago. But they're actually saying, well, these are still heroes today. Well, they're not heroes for me. As far as I'm concerned, the Crusaders were a disaster, and what they did was not Christianity. And if people don't understand, it also involved rape and pillaging on the way to Jerusalem, where they were fighting the Muslims. And the end result of it was that Saladin won, and the Christians were defeated. And as far as Muslims were concerned, this proved that Islam is a superior religion to Christianity. But that wasn't Christianity at all. And I'm afraid there's some things that go on in the United Kingdom, which, as far as I'm concerned, are not Christian. But Starmer has got no reason whatsoever to attack those people. No reason. The end result, we're told, is that there were 43 people arrested over the weekend. And it turns out of those 43, 20 of them were related to the United Kingdom. Some 13 were related to the Nakba Palestinian rally that was going on at the same time. And they say some 10 or 11 people, they didn't know who they were affiliated to. Now, that compares, incidentally, to some 50 people arrested on the same day at the FA Cup final. But more dramatically, it compares with 528 people who were arrested at the Notting Hill Carnival, 4 people stabbed, and that is where there was serious violence. But there is no plan by the government to ban the Notting Hill Carnival, and no attack from the government on the Notting Hill Carnival. But they attack a rally which, by their own standards, has to be considered extremely peaceful.
And the fact that they were or could have used armored vehicles and certainly did use face recognition for the first time. This is intimidation. And this is where this government stands. They are anti-Christian, pro-Muslim. Without a doubt, this proves it.
Well, yes, absolutely. Because, as far as Starmer's concerned, it's all about votes. And yeah, exactly that's what's going on. That they want the votes of the Muslims. So, the last thing they can do is to ban the Nakba March. I mean, they've got to allow that to take place. And the last thing they want to do is to attack them. And they also obviously don't want to attack the Notting Hill Carnival because that's Jamaicans by and large. But lots of other people joining in with Jamaicans, having lots of fun and taking drugs and goodness knows what and going over the top. Well, they don't want to attack that because most of those are Labour voters. So this isn't, and the people at the United Kingdom march aren't Labour voters. Some of them are maybe former Labour voters, but not Labour voters now. So that's the march you attack because they're not Labour voters. I mean, that's what's going on. Frankly, it is disgusting and shameful.
We're going to discuss this morning, Sid, political philosophy in various ways. Don't turn off, folks. It's not as hard work as it sounds, because I think it's so important. A lot of people don't understand it. We've touched on it in one way or another just already. But birth rates throughout Europe are being analysed. 2.1 is recognised. Some people say it's 2.3 as replacement levels. And throughout Europe, it's below that, well below that in Spain, which is fascinating. You asked the question, why? And can I suggest there are 3 elephants in the room, Sid, that nobody mentions. There's all sorts of fancy reasons, but let me put them to you and see what you make of them. The 3 no-go areas are abortion. Just think how many people would be alive now if this wretched abortion regime and it happens in many countries, was not in place. Secondly, breakup of the family unit. Continually, laws are being passed that encourage breakup of family, whether they intend to or not. It's what goes on. And the third reason is people are actually very reticent to bring children into the world as we have it. Wars, rumours of wars. What future is there? Should we really bring a child into the world? Let's enjoy ourselves instead. Now, these need examining.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, immediately you mentioned the birth rate. The first thing that came to me immediately was abortion. And we're talking about the UK, 11 million babies have been aborted in a mother's womb since 1967. And that those 11 million people would probably all be alive today. So that would be 11 million more people alive than we have alive. And what you're saying about the family is also right, because traditionally, when the family was honoured and marriage was honoured in society, and people were by and large having sex within marriage. And when you have sex within marriage, then you easily have children. Children are then brought up with two parents who love them and care for them, and you have, as a result of it, is a stable society, and you can have an expanding society. Whereas when a lot of sex is taking place outside of marriage, you're not providing a stable environment for bringing children into the world. And that is why some people just say, "Oh, well, you just kill the baby." But that, that's a terrible, terrible answer, frankly. But see, abortion itself is not necessarily the problem. The problem is that there's too many people being conceived outside of marriage. So but abortion is making the problem worse. That's the reality of it. And the third thing you mentioned, which was like problems in the world and people don't want to bring children into the world, I don't think it's so much problems in the world. I think it's more standard of living. And I have known somebody who was incidentally my boss when I was at work, and he actually said to me, I don't want to bring children into the world 'cause it's going to reduce my standard of living. And there is a cost involved in having in bringing children into the world. Obviously, there's a cost in there's a big financial cost, and children are a big financial burden. But I think that, frankly, that's a terrible attitude, because I think children are a massive plus. I mean, they do knock spots off the parents, frankly. I mean, and they do challenge the parents, and that's good and that's healthy. But especially later on in life, I mean, obviously, I'm extremely pleased to have my three girls, three sons-in-law, six grandchildren. I mean, they're a tremendous plus to life. And people that think, oh, no, it's going to reduce my standard of living if I bring children into the world, I think have got a very, very bad attitude. But it's there, definitely.
Yeah, I'm sure it is. The other thing, of course, in favour of the family is that it's more a reorientation of where our aims are and what our goals are. If it's going out and having a Costa coffee two or three times a week, as opposed to having a child, then yeah, put that in perspective if you can. We move on, Sid, and the entitled problem I'm going to raise here is academia versus Israel. Now, this is a real problem. Again, it's not touched on. There are constant accusations, of course, about genocide and Israel. Now, you want a definition of genocide? It's the wiping out for whatever reason of a nation. But NGOs are up to this against Israel. Everybody says, oh, it's genocide. Frankly said, it's a complete and utter nonsense, and I'll tell you why. And it's been illustrated recently in the States because there is an organization called IAGS, and it stands for the International Association of Genocide Scholars, because a lot of this comes out from our universities, both sides of the pond. where the academics get hold of these theories and propound them to their students. And the students are brainwashed, if you wish. And when you look into the IAGS figures, people claim that as their right for platform. I can speak because I'm a member of the IAGS. Really? Nobody understands the fact that anybody can be a member of this distinguished organisation. If you pay $30, you don't have any qualifications, you don't have any experiences, either inside or outside politics. You pay your $30, you've immediately got a platform and you can talk nonsense. It's not the only thing, and it's not the only platform where you can buy your way, and it's a good money spinner, isn't it?
Yes. Now let's talk about reality of what's actually gone on in the world. Hitler engaged in genocide. He was deliberately trying to wipe out all the Jews in Germany and killed 6 million Jews. And Muslims have at times engaged in genocide. Islamic State engaged in genocide in Syria, wiping out the Yazidis, literally systematically killing all the Yazidis, and also killing Christians as well. And Morsi engaged in genocide in Egypt. I mean, he deliberately was trying to purify Egypt of all non-Muslims. That's why the army intervened. And even though he was elected head of the Muslim Brotherhood, and incidentally, it was quite interesting that Obama actually welcomed his election, but he was elected as president of Egypt. But because he was engaging in genocide against the Christians, the army intervened and stopped him, and he was removed from power. That's why he was removed from power. And there's no question that Muslims believe in genocide of Jews, because it's very interesting. We now actually have a email that was sent from Sinwar to Nasrallah, so that was sent from Hamas to Hezbollah on literally the day, October the 7th, 2023, that Hamas invaded Israel. And Sinwar didn't tell Nasrallah in advance of what he was planning to do because he was scared that if he did, that the Israeli intelligence would intervene the communication and find out their plans, and they had to keep them top secret. They had to keep telling the Israelis that they had no intention of doing anything like that, that they wanted to have a more friendly relationship, and so on and so forth. That's the message they had to keep giving the Israelis to hide what their genuine plans were. But on the day when the invasion was taking place, Sinwar sent an email to Nasrallah saying, please join me. Please attack northern Israel. Do it today. We are invading southern Israel today. We're going across the border. We're going to kill as many Jews as we can. And, please do the same in northern Israel. This is how we're going to wipe out Israel. And in that email, he also said, don't tell anyone that we want to wipe out the Jews. Tell them that we want to enforce international treaties. Because if you tell them that we want to wipe out the Jews, then we'll have international opinion will be against us. If we tell them that we're just enforcing international treaties, then we can get international opinion on our side. That's what he actually said in the email. Do not tell people we want to wipe out all Jews. But he knew what he wanted. Nasrallah knew what he wanted. We know what Iran wanted. That's where the genocide is. And what they tend to do, the Muslims, the reality of what they tend to do is put on Israel what their plans are. So they blame their enemy for what they're doing. And that's exactly what's going on. And unfortunately, the Green Party and the hard left are complete fools. And instead of facing the reality of what's going on, they just lap up this ridiculous propaganda and believe it all and just take it on hook, line and sinker. But we're not fools. We know the truth.
Well, I'm going to read you a headline. The Greens, the new nasty party. Under Zach Polanski's leadership, the Green Party is swimming in a sewer of Islamo-left bigotry.
Well, yes, you see, because it's very interesting. I was reading actually that a former deputy leader of the Green Party was actually saying we need to get back to environment issues. They're not in these local elections. The Greens haven't talked about the environment at all. It's all been about Palestine and getting the Muslims on side and getting the Muslims to vote for them, and they've been successful. The Muslims have voted for them. They won loads and thousands of votes, but they've won it, as I say, utterly dishonestly.
I've got to say at this stage, Sid, that we do a lot with the US at the moment, and they are completely confounded without any understanding what's happened to Britain. You've just got to quote how many Muslim mayors now are in Britain. The Sharia problem, the Sharia law problem that we have in Britain. They just cannot understand what is happening.
Well, yes, but we know Muslims target the position of mayor, and they've targeted the position of mayor in New York. And they've won the position of mayor in New York. So they can say, oh, we don't understand what's happening, but it's also happening in America. So, but they have to understand it. We know what's going on. And also the other thing, by the way, if people don't understand, is Muslims don't believe in democracy. They don't think democracy is a great idea and we must respect the wishes of the people. No, they think democracy is a tool that they can use in order to further the Islamic agenda. And they've got no problem whatsoever in rigging votes. And, it's part of Islam to rig votes in order to achieve their end. So, you can expect it and you have to be on your guard for it. But we know it goes on. By the way, if you don't know what I'm talking about, I mean, I've been involved myself in the local elections, and I had somebody ring me up and say, I've looked at the electoral register and found that there's 4 people registered to vote at my address that I don't know who they are. And I've informed the elections office and they haven't got back to me. Yeah. So I informed the electoral commission when she told me. I informed the electoral commission as well as informing the elections office and said, nothing's been done about this. Something needs to be done. And they came back to me and said, we've informed the police. But the police never did anything. But that's just a clear example that somebody finds there's 4 people registered to vote at their house. They don't know who they are, and they go and vote somehow. It's just one way of rigging elections. It's going on.
Well, it certainly went on to get Sadiq in the position he's in as Mayor of London, of course. And one wonders what will happen next time. I think he's already given up on it. People have sussed the situation.
Let me just say, as far as Sadiq Khan is concerned, I don't think he's going to be Labour candidate in the next London mayor elections, because we've already found out there's people behind the scenes pushing to be the next mayor of London for the Labour Party. So I think that the Labour Party recognise that Sadiq Khan is now very unpopular and want an alternative candidate.
Pity they can't be so assiduous about the present PM, isn't it then?
Well, I think they are being in a sense. I think there's a lot of people in the Labour Party that want Starmer out. A lot of people, and there's certainly a move to get him out. But I think Starmer, as I say, is being very clever behind the scenes and is working like crazy to stay in power.
The one thing America has a distinct advantage over in all this ourselves, and that is freedom of speech. We ain't got it like the Americans have. At least they can complain about California, about Chicago, about New York, and they do. But we are reticent.
Well, you see, what America has got is a constitution which we don't have. So, the first point of the constitution is the right of people to have free expression of their beliefs. So if someone is denied free expression of their beliefs, they can go to court. And of course, in America, they've got no problem in suing people. They can go to court and say, my rights under the Constitution are being infringed. And that's what goes on. That's what happens. We can't do the same in Britain. And, and by the way, while we're just talking about freedom of speech, can I just say, I mean, I'm very pleased that the pastor who was preaching in Bristol has been completely cleared of any wrongdoing. But why on earth did the police arrest him in the first place when he just preaching in the streets in Bristol? I mean, they arrest him, put him in put him in custody while they decide what they're going to do, and then let him go, and then decide afterwards that he's done nothing wrong.
Mm.
But those police who did that should have been arresting burglars, not arresting somebody who hasn't even broken the law in the streets. But this is what's going on in the United Kingdom. And it's quite interesting too. By the way, we were talking earlier about the people arrested at the United Kingdom rally. Some dozen of those people were arrested for what they said. They were arrested for hate speech. The police, that's what the police said. So you see, we've got this thing in Britain where you can be arrested for speech, which in America, under the Constitution, you can't be arrested for speech unless you're inciting violence.
Yeah, one has to say, Sid, that Avon and Somerset police have got previous there. It depends on the chief constable, frankly, in many reasons. What is their prime motivation? What drives them? And there are certain areas of the country it's better to keep your mouth shut in. I can think of the Bournemouth area as another area you've got to be careful in.
Yes,
Now, LGBT also are behind this. They're all part of it to suppress the truth, whether it be in our schools, in our unis, or in the workplace when we have this dreadful DEI. More of that in shortly, but let me carry on the theme a little bit because out of Germany has come quite a bit of truthful recognition of what is happening in Europe. And I'll read this to get it right. The foreign-born population of the European Union exceeded 64 million this last year, or 14% of the population. That's in 2025, a historic high. Spain alone accounted for roughly a third of the bloc's annual increase. It's going to be a downside more than that with a 6 months amnesty, 3 months to sign in and 6 months to get recognised. They're just opening the floodgates here. Now, there's a lady called Erika Steinbeck, chairwoman of the Conservative Erasmus Foundation, and she has come out with some thought-provoking stuff that the people being let in the countries, and you and I know this, Sid, mainly are Afghanistan, Syria, Morocco, African nations in general. And these are Muslims coming in. And it's designed, encouraged, and promoted. What is going on here? Who is deciding? Well, we can clearly say if it's a left-wing government in Europe, you've got a major problem. Look at Britain. There's no desire to stop boats. There's no desire to stop immigration at all. It's always a left-wing government. Now, it's easy to say, oh, well, they want the vote. Fine, I'm sure that's part of it. But is it more sinister than that, Steve?
Well, it's from the point of view of the left wingers, no, it's not more sinister because, as far as they're concerned, Muslims are lovely people, and there's no problem with Islam. We've just got to integrate and welcome Muslims into the country. If they want to come here, let them come here. These poor people are being forced to flee from countries, and they're forced to leave their homes, and and we need to welcome them into our countries, and roll out the red carpet and say, yes, welcome, welcome, welcome to these poor people. And in any case, immigration is good for our economy. It expands our economy, and we have more people. There's no problem in having more people. Let them come. That's the point. That's not sinister. That's a genuine attitude of people on the left. What is sinister is why the people are coming, because they're not fleeing anything. And I think it was shown very clearly by Kabatu, for instance, which I sometimes quote, who was a man who came here from Ethiopia and was convicted of sexually assaulting a 14-year-old girl. And afterwards, he said, I had no idea that it was against the law to have sexual relations with a 14-year-old girl in the United Kingdom. And he was told that it was perfectly acceptable to have sex with 14-year-old girls in the UK. And they're even told, come over, have sex with children in the UK. It's no problem. There's loads of people here who are non-Muslims. They're very attractive girls. You can just get hold of them and have sex with them. That's why these rape gangs are going on in the United Kingdom, because people are being encouraged to come over here and have sex with children. That's the reality of it. And we now know that also people are making a lot of money out of it as well. They've actually this week they've actually found somebody in a phone shop, which itself, by the way, is yes, which itself is decidedly fishy, because what happens is that they steal people's phones and then they take them to the phone shops that unlock the phones that's been stolen, and which is completely illegal, but that's what they do. And then you've now got a stolen phone that's unlocked, and you're able to use it or even sell it, And so these phone shops are decidedly fishy. But anyway, they found somebody running a phone shop and found out that he's also somebody that's making enormous amount of money from illegal immigration, because charging these people that are coming over. So, it's like, so they're making money all ways. But the reality is that these people coming over are on a Hajj. And that was, by the way, exposed by Mamdani, the mayor of New York, who actually said, these people are coming on a journey. This is part of an Islamic tradition. Oh, yes, an Islamic tradition, deliberately to make the West more Islamic. So that's what's going on. What's going on is that they're not fleeing anything. They're coming over as part of an Islamic crusade to make the West Islamic. And we have to be honest and understand what's going on. Trump, as far as I'm concerned, is absolutely right to close the borders and say no to illegal immigration, full stop. There's nothing wrong with legal immigration where people need to come. If people want to come to university and study genuinely, fine. If people want to come here and work genuinely, fine. But you pay for a visa to come. And when you've finished your study, or if you're no longer working here, you go back. That's nothing wrong with that. But there is something wrong with the illegal immigration that's going on. Trump has completely stopped it. There's been no illegal immigration from the southern border in the United States in the last 12 months. Completely stopped it. And if he can stop it in America, we could, if we wanted to, stop it in the United Kingdom. It's much easier to stop from an island than it is with a 2,000-mile land border. Much easier. All we've got to do is to put the Royal Navy in the Channel and say no one will pass, and tell people you're not allowed to come. We're not allowing anyone to come across the Channel to this country. Quite straightforward. If you want to claim asylum, you can claim asylum in the first safe country. That is international law.
Don't forget, Sid, in all this, that our children have been brainwashed by our so-called teaching profession for years. And they've gone through primary, secondary school and university continually brainwashed. And they actually believe the facts that you've stated. Why people are being invited in the country. Call it a soft touch country. Yes, you can. And you can understand why the younger generation generally have these feelings. It's encouraging some things that have come out this week from unis. It's calculated, even from the wokest unis in our country, at least a third of the students have sussed the problem. They don't like being bullied at uni or at school if they don't believe what the progressives believe. Progressives are bullying our children, especially at universities. But a third of them have actually reached the conclusion it is wrong. So there is hope for the future, Sid, but we've got to take every chance we can pointing this out and not misleading our kids and the older generation as well into believing, as the BBC does, and they've had their comeuppance again this week from a whistleblower who's worked in the the news part of the BBC for 13 years. And he's complained, I'm not going back there. I've had enough of being bullied and being DEI'd, everything that's coming out from there. No wonder Trump is annoyed and wants to sue them. The truth is now coming out about the BBC.
It's not that he wants to sue them. He is suing them. He's suing them for $5 billion. And he's suing them because of what his speech on January the 6th. He said in his speech that we must go and march after I finished speaking peacefully and patriotically to Congress and make our views known. And at the end of his speech, he said, we're in a major battle. And if we don't fight and fight like hell, we won't have a country left anymore.
Mm.
The BBC spliced the speech so that it said, when I finish my speech, we must go and march to Congress and we must fight like hell. If we don't have a fight, we won't have a country anymore. So they spliced those two bits of the speech together, even though there was 50 minutes between the two sections. And even though he actually said we must march peacefully and patriotically. And he's suing them for 5 billion for doing that. The BBC have admitted that they were at fault and apologized for doing it, but have basically said that they don't believe there was any harm that came to Trump from them doing it. They believe that it was perfectly that it was well, reasonable expression, I suppose, even though they were wrong to do it, that no harm came from doing it. That's the BBC position. Trump's position is, I'm going to get as much as I can possibly get out of you. And interestingly enough, what I've just told you, he actually referred to this last week when a BBC radio interviewer asked him a question on when he was traveling back from China, and he said, "Oh, and which news channel are you from?" And they said BBC Radio. "Oh, BBC. I'm suing the BBC," he said. So he's got it. He's got it in for the BBC. But yes, I mean, at the end of the day, the media are dishonest. But thank God we now have GB News as well as the Daily Mail, and we have the possibility of having true news out there. Though even though the GB News are hamstrung by Ofcom, who are on their back all the time, telling them that you have to put the woke point of view has to be put across as an alternative point of view in every item that you're discussing. And they said it. I mean, Patrick Christie said it when I was there the Friday before last. He said, "Oh no, we have to have somebody here supporting Starmer because Ofcom have told us we have to. So we've actually shipped somebody here to put a pro-Starmer point of view because the Labour member of their panel was actually saying that Starmer's got to go." So because the Labour member of the panel was taking that approach, they had to bring somebody in according to Ofcom rules that would support Starmer. I mean, it's ridiculous, isn't it? But that's the reality. And by the way, they never have to bring anyone in to support the Christian point of view because that's never a requirement of Ofcom.
Surprise, surprise. Time is running out, Sid. We'll cover one item very quickly before we go on to the footy item. And the latest figures I'll give you, more than 600,000 households receive more in benefits than average worker's salary. The first analysis of its kind has revealed. The figure shows that 625,000 households were each given more than £32,200 in welfare payments last year. The average annual salary of a British worker after tax, despite the introduction of the benefits cap. Well, there are 16,000 of that 600,000 actually that are earning more than the equivalent £60,000 a year for doing absolutely nothing. And we can't stop it because the left wing won't let Starmer, but would he change it anyway? Do it because the left wing are in control in Parliament.
Well, yes, I mean, the reality is that there's a powerful group of backbenchers in the Labour Party that are basically telling Starmer what he can and can't do. And by the way, that is entirely Starmer's fault because the first thing he did when he was elected Prime Minister was to announce the cancellation of the winter fuel payment. He thought everyone would blame the Conservatives for it because he said, "Oh, we've inherited a 20 billion black hole and therefore we're forced to get rid of the winter fuel payment." But no one blamed the Conservatives. They all blamed Labour for it. And the Labour backbenchers, when they realised what had happened, said, "Next time we're going to have to organise ourselves and not allow something like this to go through." So that's what caused them to organise themselves. And they are now organised. The next time when he wanted to save 30 billion from the welfare budget, they said no, and he had to do one of his 24 U-turns. But yes, so Starmer can't do it with this Parliament and won't be able to do it. But there is a need to remove the focus from just paying people not to work to encouraging and paying and giving people an incentive to get back to work, and that is the CPA policy.
155 billion a year go on benefits. And as we mentioned a couple of weeks ago, when 1 in 3 new cars sold in the United Kingdom go to benefit claimants, it's complete madness.
Well, yes. Well, yeah. I mean, it's right that people who are disabled should be allowed to, be allowed to have a vehicle that means that they can get around, an adapted disabled vehicle. That is right. But when it comes to a point of view of, of 1/3 of all vehicles is now going to disabled people, I mean, that's just completely, the whole thing has gone far, far too far. So that we're now not just giving vehicles to people that are severely disabled and need help to get around. We're giving vehicles to people that have got some mental problems, and and it just gets ridiculous.
Sid, we've got to move on to even more ridiculous things. I reckon, soccer speaking wise, that we're in a bit of a cusp. We can go either one way or the other. I think football's lost its way, and I'll tell you why. Threefold problems here. Our friendly VAR, we will agree to disagree on that. But it's getting more difficult for me to agree to disagree, to be frank, after this last week. There were some bizarre decisions because of VAR. And it's not made it fairer at all. It might come in the odd time, but with other crazy decisions, it's made no difference except to lengthen the game to 100 minutes and spoil it for a spectator sport. Anyway, we move on. That's just one. Too much playing out from the back. Now, we're going to talk mathematics here, Sid, because It's making so many games boring. Basically, mathematics, if you kick the ball up the field as a goalkeeper, mathematically, you've got a 50-50 chance of either team getting hold of the ball. At least it's near the 6-yard box anyway. If, on the other hand, you play out from the back, well, A, the goalkeeper could make a complete, and he does quite often, and pass to the opposition player, an accident, or the opposite team challenge those people trying to get up the field. But if you work it out, it's got probably about a 1 in 8 chance actually of you not getting near the 6-yard box. And all you're doing is playing back, playing sideways, and getting nowhere. It's boring. And lastly, Sid, yes, there's too much money in football. And that's been highlighted again with what's going to happen in America, the cost of watching the match. And even TNT Sports, XBT Sports, boo, are stopping us watching the Champions League final because they want the exclusivity. And it's traditional with finals, it's open for everyone. But TNT want to drive the cost up for the viewer again.
Okay, so we're agreeing to differ on VAR. On the second point you're making, I'm afraid we also differ because you see, I actually love watching the press, which is now commonplace in football. So whereas there was a period where players were just playing from the back, and the opposing team would just sit behind the halfway line, and sometimes it'd be several minutes before the ball arrived at the halfway line because the players were just playing across at the back, and largely uncontested. But that's not what happens anymore now. And when the ball is lost at the back, the attacking team will press and try and win the ball back close to the goal, and it frequently happens and can often lead to a goal. This was, I believe, something that was instituted by Guardiola, but it's certainly been very effective, and there's a lot of teams play it. Certainly, it's something that my team has in Reading have played and played very well, and they've realised that if you're going to do the press effectively, you can't do it with just one player. You've got to have at least 3 or 4 players that are all pressing the defence and trying to win the ball back quickly. This can also lead frequently to some very fast attacks because you're doing the press, you can also leave holes in behind. So a defending team can sometimes push the ball up very quickly. I saw that, by the way, in the game between Arsenal and Burnley. That was a very, very important game this last week. And you saw Arsenal were pressing Burnley all the time, and most of the game was being played in the Burnley half. Arsenal was struggling to actually get the ball in the net with mass defence, but there were occasions when Burnley were able to get the ball very quickly up the field and very nearly scored on that basis. So it's I actually like modern football. I think it's very attractive and very interesting to watch. As far as money is concerned, I think there is enormous amounts of money in football, but the fact that there's so much money in football is a reflection of the fact that it's that people want to watch it and people enjoy watching it. But yes, I don't think that the Champions League final should be should be sold to the highest bidder. I think that's completely wrong. This should be it should be freely available on all channels, frankly, because it should be the primary club game of the season, and I think it is the primary club game of the season in Europe. And the fact that Arsenal are in it makes it more attractive for us. But the idea that we can't watch it because it's been sold to the highest bidder, I think is totally wrong. Totally wrong.
Well, there you go. He's got 1 out of 3 right. We, we've got to say finally that looks as though Pep is on his way from Manchester City, and he's had a glorious 10 years. He went at the right time, of course, because before they got the new rules about finance. Money was poured into the club like nobody's business.
Mm.
But having said that, you still got to be a good manager, and he clearly was,
Yeah.
despite the fact that he invented playing from the back. But we wish him well wherever he goes to.
He also invented the press.
Yeah, which press is what we got to say. Sid, thank you very much, and we'll see you very shortly.